So this is my SDL for gradient HPLC. So many of the problems associated with isocratic HPLC analysis can be overcome using gradient HPLC. And for gradient HPLC, you're basically altering the mobile phase composition during the analysis. And you normally do this by increasing the amount of organic modifier. So as you can see here, the initial composition is chosen so that the strength is appropriate to retain and resolve early eluting analytes, because in this picture the peaks aren't exactly separated that well, and the elution strength is then increased in a predetermined way to elute compounds with optimum resolution. So the final mobile phase composition is actually altered to ensure elution of these compounds of interest from the column within a reasonable time. So these two peaks here, they've been eluted at such a slow rate, and we can improve it using gradient HPLC. Explain gradient specificities and advantages. So in saying this, there are three essential parameters required to specify a gradient in reverse phase HPLC. So there's initial percentage B, final percentage B, and gradient time over which the transition in allotropic strength will be achieved. So the advantages of using gradient HPLC, this includes increasing detection, ability to separate complex samples. So for gradient method, when the range of analyte properties is broad, peaks eluting at or near the void volume, so basically at T0, they're not exactly poorly retained like that of the isocratic system, and therefore the resolution has improved. So another advantage of gradient HPLC would be shorter analysis times, decrease in column deterioration due to strongly retained components, and column cleaning. So with everything, there's pros and cons, and in this case, gradient HPLC also has problems. So this includes instruments vary in their dwell volume. So this can cause method transfer problems, long re-equilibration times, long cycle times, so you have to wait for it to re-equilibrate and then you have to inject the sample. Then hard to reproduce the retention times, and most importantly, the equipment itself is much more expensive. So now I'll go to Ardent to show you a diagram. So as you can see here, this is an isocratic diagram and a gradient diagram. And for isocratic systems, the composition of the mobile phase is consistent throughout the whole time period. So you have 40% water and 60% acetonitrile, and over here it's exactly the same even at 20 minutes. So if I just scroll this across, you can see the problem is that the three early eluting peaks aren't separated well, and the three later eluting peaks are separated too well. So what we can do is use a gradient method, and here you can see it's 50% water composition and 50% acetonitrile. Then at 20 minutes it's 20% water and 80% acetonitrile. So with this diagram, you can see that the three earlier eluting peaks, which weren't separated very well, are now separated very distinctly, and the three later peaks, which were separated too well, now they're being retained at a time where it's reasonable. So for our experiment, the initial concentration of B percentage will be at 5% from 0 minutes to 3 minutes, and then the final concentration of B will be at 100% at 20 minutes. So we should also take into account the gradient steepness. So you can see from this diagram here that the steepness helps separate the peaks and make them more distinct. And this is actually really helpful if the peaks, even after the gradient run, they're still closely together. So it's a factor that you have to think of. And with this, we hope to get better separation and more distinct peaks overall with the new gradient method. Thank you for listening.